Hey, Hawkeye fans. Welcome to a Iowa women's basketball halftime edition of the post-game football show after the Iowa Hawkeyes inexplicably beat the Michigan State Spartans 20-17. Tyler, this is one of those days. By the way, the Iowa women are ahead of Miami of Florida 36-28 at halftime without chit-chat, right? And sounds like Layla Hayes had a ankle turn as well, according to Dargan Southard. Haven't been able to watch that game, but so far so good for the women. Ava Hayden, 12 points, I think. 12 points, yeah, at half. So anyway, Tyler, I had my, had to change my story a few times there. How about you?
It seems like it's almost every game
Yeah.
occurrence. Yeah. We had like the luxury, the Minnesota game and the Wisconsin game was both like kind of nice, but the outside of that, it hasn't been great.
So, yeah, I didn't really hear what you're talking about, but
we have a promotion.
We've got multiple people in the current room I'm in. But anyway, the Hawkeye, I didn't really hear anything you said, but the way that Iowa pulled this game kind of out of thin air, what was the most miraculous part to you out of this whole deal?
Well, I mean, Iowa was down by 10 points in the fourth quarter. It felt similar to the Penn State game in a way where Iowa was trailing by double digits in the second half. And I mean, if well, actually, so this podcast is a great basically an illustration of how Iowa started the game, which was pretty terribly, and the offense at least. And I mean, Iowa for three quarters they didn't deserve to win this game. The offense looked absolutely atrocious the first three quarters. Looked like the offense from 2023, basically, where Iowa. It was like there was no rhythm. It didn't look like they had answers for anything. And Michigan State goes on a 17-0 run after Iowa went up 7-0 on the Caden Weegan electric punt return touchdown. And Iowa found a way in the fourth quarter. It wasn't pretty with the way that the offense played for three quarters, but they get it done in the fourth quarter. The defense settles in after letting Michigan State get a rhythm going through the air. The most miraculous part to me, down by 10 in the fourth quarter, not a game that you would think Iowa would win. This was a very ugly game, very ugly win for Iowa, and ultimately tip of the hat to Drew Stevens, who kicks the game-winning field goal, to Caden Weegan, who basically kept Iowa in the game for a long stretch with his touchdown. And the Iowa offense finally decided to start playing in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, sorry, I'm like completely distracted. They turned like someone came in. Hey, I'm sorry to bug you, and then they turn off the lights. Like, what the heck? What do you think I'm doing down here? But I think you can see me okay. It looks all right. So anyway, yeah, 10 points in the final 89 seconds for the Hawkeyes after they basically went more than four quarters without an offensive touchdown. Because you think about the Vanderzee to Gronowski pass. Remember that a long time ago at USC? That would happen with like 3.5 minutes left in the first half. Iowa does not get its next offensive touchdown until, almost six quarters. Jacob Gill scores with, minute 29 left in the game. So like almost six or more than six quarters, right? I'm doing that right?
No,
more than six.
It was five. It was five because they went the last half of the USC game, first three quarters of this game without the offense.
Yeah, but then almost the whole fourth is what I'm saying, without a touchdown.
Right.
But
right.
Yeah. But without a point though until the fourth. Drew Stevens does get that field goal. I guess we'll give the offense credit for that drive. There was some nice passes from Gronowski on that drive. But hey, I'll be honest. I thought that Kirk Ferentz had a real decision to make, even at halftime, with how poorly Gronowski was playing. And then after, the Boo Birds were out. The Boo Birds were out when it was 10-7. And then it got to 17-7. And Hecklinski was out there. He was out there warming up just as vigorously as Gronowski was going into that drive. I did ask Ferentz if he considered it. He said he never did. He said he'd stick with your guys. And, I certainly had doubts at that point. I'll be honest. And my text group knows that. Because we had seen him, kind of have the yips and just not have confidence against Albany. You go back to that game. There have been just a couple of other spots this year where he just doesn't have it. But hey, good. All credit to him. I guess that's why he's won 56 games now as a starter. He was resilient. He throws for 30 yards in the first quarters. He throws for 117 in the fourth quarter alone. Tyler, how do you even put Gronowski's performance into perspective here? And by the way, he did rush for 57 yards, so had some couple big plays with the legs here too to beat Michigan State.
Credit Gronowski for sticking with it, and when it would have been easy to let things spiral, he came through when it mattered. I think back to this was like the Penn State game. This was like the Oregon game when Iowa's offense delivered when it really mattered the most. But let's be frank here. It was an awful offensive performance for 3 quarters. It was a terrible start. So Mark Gronowski didn't even complete a pass till about 2 minutes left in the first half. And he turned the ball over twice tonight. He the first pass threw it into double coverage, a terrible pass. I'm not exactly sure what he saw in that play. And then he fumbles in the second half, which it looked like he was trying to kind of shovel the ball forward, but it got before he was able to finish that motion, it was tipped from the back. So Iowa's offense looked very rough, and the running game at this point is just like Iowa still hasn't had that big playability from the run game. And on top of that, it's just like credit to Michigan State, because they basically were making Iowa. I don't even know if you want to call Iowa's offense one dimensional, because they were running the ball a little bit, but it wasn't enough when the passing game is that bad. So it was so look, I mean, Mark Gronowski, like I said, credit to him for coming through when it mattered most, but like Iowa shouldn't have been in that situation in the first place, because the offense, I mean, it brought back bad memories. Like it kind of brought, we were talking about it looked a little bit like the Deacon Hill type offense, where it's just like it looked like an offense with like almost no confidence. Like they're going out there.
Exactly. Yeah.
It was like the type of thing where you're like, they just can't move the ball. Like it looked that bad.
Yeah, and Lester's play calling reflected that. I think I'm trying to find the drive. After they fall behind 10-7, Gronowski rush middle for 2 yards, Moulton rush right for 4 yards, Moulton rush middle for 2 yards, punt. Like they had no confidence in him throwing the ball. He threw 2 passes in the third quarter. One of them was right at the end of the quarter on a dump off, I believe, to Vanami to start the drive after they got down 17-7. So yeah, I mean, nothing. like there was just no, and they had to try to give him easy throws, and yet all of a sudden, and then he probably makes, would you say maybe his 2 best throws as a Hawkeye? They got to be right up there, right with the Dayton Howard pass up at Rutgers, right? The throw to Jacob Gill. I mean, I certainly had doubts. 2nd and 10 from the 13-yard line. Even after they cut it to 17-10, even after the Caden Weechin punt return puts him in prime position. Iowa gets to the 13-yard line. It's 2nd down, and you're like, are they going to be able to score here? I mean, I really did not feel confident about it at that point. And then Gronowski puts the ball in a spot where only maybe the defender could have caught it, but Jacob Gill makes a tremendous catch on that play for the touchdown, and then Iowa somehow gets the ball back, off. It sounded like a questionable pass interference call potentially on 3rd down for Michigan State. They quick punt it. Iowa takes over with 41 seconds left. I told Dargan, I was like, I bet he plays for overtime here. No, they didn't. Throw to Vanami over the middle. Like Kirk Ferentz, believed in his guys, stuck with his guys. And then the big throw from Gronowski to Vanderzee, was very reminiscent of the throw to Malik Benson that Oregon made to set up the winning field goal. Same direction, same spot on the field. Almost an identical finish in that sense to me to how the Oregon game ended.
This was well on its way to being a catastrophe, because Michigan State coming into this game, they lost 7 in a row. They were winless in the Big Ten, and credit to them, because they didn't look like a team that had its morale totally defeated. They put up a good fight, but I mean, this was a game that looked like it was headed towards a disaster for Iowa, because all of Iowa's 4 losses have been like respectable. They've all been against ranked opponents. 2 of them have been on the road. They've been by 1 score. And this just felt like, okay, this things are going to kind of take a turn for the worse here. I was able to avoid that. And part of that, thanks to Caden Weegan, who his first punt return of the game, he almost broke free, and then the second one he kind of weaved through a little bit, and that sets he's now Iowa's all-time leader in combined returns and punt and kickoff returns, passing Tim Dwight, who he said reached out to him before the game, telling him to break the record. He did so. I mean, it's the dude just is absolutely electric with the ball, and it's been an up and down year for Iowa special teams. There's been some really high highs and there's been some really low lows. It was two all-time greats in Iowa football special teams history that helped Iowa get this win. So credit to the special teams, because they played a huge hand in this win with Caden Weegan, and then even Caden Weegan, just beyond that, kind of beyond the return, setting Iowa up with some good field position in the punt return game. It continues to baffle me why teams are kicking it to him, and Michigan State finally got smart enough to basically kick with their quarterback to make sure that he wasn't on the field. And then Drew Stevens, I mean, it's again, it's been kind of a up and down road for him, but especially this season with the Indiana game and, him being a target for criticism, but the game winners that he's had on the last play of the game against Northwestern, against Nebraska, and now against Michigan State. These are, appreciate the fact that these are two guys who have ascended in the Iowa football record books, and Iowa certainly benefited in a big way.
Yeah, Caden Weegan had as many punt return yards, 147, as Mark Gronowski had passing yards, and Gronowski did amazing to get to that point. So they both had 147. Michigan State punted 9 times. One time, this is the nation's leading punter. One time, he shanked one, completely shanked one. I think the threat of Weegan and a punt rush kind of freaked him out. They were obviously not wanting to kick to him. And then, 3 times, it was easy to tell the quarterback was going to punt. Iowa should have sent Lutmer back there. They didn't. And that probably would have stopped that. However, so 4 of those 9 punts were completely scared off, I guess, by Weegan is what I would say. But then 3 of them got to him where he could return it. And the craziest part of it all was that he got a chance in that fourth quarter to set Iowa up for that short field touchdown, that was when they got it, right? That was to set up the Gill touchdown, right?
Yeah.
So, and that was just that was maybe his most incredible return of the 3, because it did not look like there was much there, but he was a risk taker, took it, and God, I thought it was a late hit too, to be honest. I know we can't go forever because we got a ton of writing to do, but I do want to give a shout out to the defense as well. They had to almost play a perfect fourth quarter, after they got punched in the mouth too. They had a lot of injuries happen to them. Lutmer got hurt at one point. Hall was out. Wampa was out. He told me he was cramping so bad they had to, I don't know if they did an IV or what, but they had to get him back to where he could go back into the game. He said his whole body was cramping. I don't know what happened to Lutmer exactly, but he was out for a while, came back. So, this defense ended up kind of being patchwork as well. And how about Carson Shire? I think he had his best game as a Hawkeye. I know that was the first time we've talked to him in a really long time. He was tremendous.
Yeah, he was great. He had, in the first half alone, he had 9 tackles, 3 tackles for loss. He seems like a guy that he has just kind of ascended. And with there being some instability between the two Jadens, Harrell and Montgomery, with Jaden Harrell being injured, Shire has really cemented given Iowa some stability at linebacker, along with Jackson Rexroth at the Leo position. But Zach Lutmer gets a pick, and Iowa ultimately wasn't able to cash in on that with the field goal, but he gets a pick. And then, shout out to the guys who were making kind of spot appearances, whether that be Jalen Watson. Mm-hmm. This was the most, I would imagine, meaningful snaps he has played in an Iowa uniform. So, him, and then with Wampa and Lutmer going out a little bit, Rashad Godfrey got in there for, briefly, and Cale Kolaric as well. So we saw a little bit of Iowa's depth tested, and you're already without TJ Hall, who's been Iowa's best cornerback. So credit to the defense, who they got gashed a little bit at times
Mm-hmm.
by the passing game. But the way, I mean, they forced 4 punts to finish the game. So they really
Yeah.
kind of steadied the ship in a way that they weren't. To me, it felt similar to the USC game, right? Because they started out well, and then, Michigan State starts to build some momentum, and Iowa's defense kind of shuts the door towards the back end of things. It wasn't a perfect performance by Iowa's defense, but what they did was they gave the offense enough time to try to finally get things going, and that finally ultimately happened. But they were able to keep Michigan State at 17 for long enough for that to happen.
Yeah, definitely. Let's go to some three-word headlines. Looks like the Iowa women are leading 38-28. There's your update. Early second half. Gabe Johnson says, Weegan for Heisman. I like it. J.D. Schulten, I'll take it. Kristen Schultz, Drew saves draw. Yeah, how about Drew Stevens? Yeah, like you said, I mean, misses the kick at the end of the first half. I actually thought that was a really big moment that they missed that, because they got the break to maybe go up 10-3 at half. How big would those 3 points have been later in the game? But he here he is again on a senior night, walking it off for the Hawkeyes, 44 yards out, delivers on the kick, and it looked like it was a perfect kick. What else? Kyle Webb, the great escape. Brett Johnson, senior day struggles. I would say not by the seniors. I mean, most of the seniors, Gronowski had a little bit of struggles, but it was just kind of like the running game really just didn't get going. I guess Gronowski would be the main culprit, I guess, as far as but as Jacob Gill pointed out, it's everybody, when a pass play doesn't work. But I know they wanted to come out throwing, and then it just wasn't there. Like, Gronowski just could not find his open receivers. So it was a struggle for sure. Did you think they should have benched him, by the way?
I mean,
be honest.
Yeah.
Did you think they should have benched Gronowski at some point?
I think as a journalist, I would have, yes, because I would have wanted to see what Hecklinski would have done. If I'm Kirk Ferentz, no, because I think Gronowski has done to earn enough trust that, you look at the Penn State game, the Oregon game, the way that he was able to get the offense going late in those games, that you stick with him. I think it would be too much of a risk to throw Jeremy Hecklinski in that type of situation. But to your point, this is 2 seasons in a row on the last game of the season at Kinnick that Drew Stevens has kicked a game-winning field goal. Did it against Nebraska last season, now against Michigan State this season. The other thing, though, what I was disappointed by, this Iowa team, their resolve, their character has been good, but I was disappointed how, I don't know if they just look uninterested to begin the game. I don't know if that's the right word, but it looked the most flat they've looked against a clearly inferior opponent as they have this entire season. And it was like, it just looked like, I don't know if it was the senior day emotions. I don't know if it was the fact that they've had so many close losses, or the fact that the playoff hopes are out of the conversation now. But like, it just looked like they didn't have a pep in their step. They didn't have kind of that juice that they've had for a good part of the season.
A couple more 3-word headlines. Had some good ones here. Here we go. Llama family law drama says, win your clunkers. Kevin Kopnick, Mark Made Magic. Iowa Stallion 60-minute game. It is. I mean, Iowa has taken a lot of these games to the 60th minute for sure. Jeff Winfield, I was laughing at this while you were talking. Puked but rallied. So that's it kind of was that kind of night where you just sort of had just a awful start to the evening, like one of those late night drinking binges, and then you kind of rally, and then you have a great night at the end. And then last one here from Waxtopia, on to Lincoln, Tyler. The Nebraska Cornhuskers are getting drilled right now at Penn State, 30-10. Be interesting to see, what shape the Huskers are in after that game. It looks like Penn State's just playing really, really well. Like one of those games, probably a good senior night for Penn State, right? So, it'll be interesting to see how Iowa responds. But now, a chance to go, beat your rival on the road here. Can the Hawkeyes do it? What are your early thoughts?
My first thought with the way Iowa played against Michigan State was like, this Nebraska game, if they play like this against Nebraska, that's not going to be, that looks like trouble. Even though Nebraska is getting beat by Penn State, like the way that Iowa has beaten Nebraska the last 2 seasons is just like, that's going to be, regardless of the fact of where each team is, everything that's happened up to this season, that's going to be a highly motivated Nebraska team to finally break through against Iowa. And they're going to have to play better than they did against Michigan State, because this was not a good performance. If they roll out a similar performance as they did this evening, I don't think it looks great for Iowa. They're going to have to play better. They're going to have to play like they did against Minnesota and Wisconsin, and try to find a way to close out the regular season on a high note. Because if they slog through it like they did against Michigan State, they're not going to have the home crowd behind them. They're going to have a motivated Nebraska team. So to me, that's like, you got by this one, but like you gotta pick it up for this last regular season game, or else it could be trouble.
Yeah, that'll be, assuming he stays healthy, TJ Lateef will be making his 3rd career start against the Hawkeyes in that game. Tonight, Michigan State starter was making his 3rd career start, and Phil Parker does have a tendency to do pretty well against young quarterbacks. We saw that with Grunkemeyer. He was not great. He was fine, but he wasn't great in that game here at Kinnick. But you're on the road too, so we'll see what happens there. Hard to know what I'm going to pick in that game right now. Yeah, I was feeling during this game, I was like, oh God, is this team going to end up 6-6? Because it really looked that way for a while. And when we look back on this, it's going to be, you're going to think back to it as you might not even think much about this game. And when you look back on this season, but it could end up being the difference in a season that a lot of people feel pretty good about, depending on how their next couple games go, or just kind of one of those, like a sign that maybe this team wasn't as good as we maybe thought it would be. So, this team story is still being written, I guess, Tyler.
Yeah, and it feels like, I'm gonna say, they've been on a little bit of a decline. Like they haven't been getting better, it seems like, from the last few weeks. Like with the USC game, they played well in the first half, not good in the second half. The Oregon game, they were close, but it's like, I don't know. I feel like this team, at the very least, they're not like building momentum. I don't know if that makes, like, it doesn't feel like they're.
Yeah, it feels like the offense has taken a step back here, especially just with the way you finish against USC. Now, I have to think the offensive line injuries are taking a little bit of a toll. They're playing through them because the run game wasn't quite there. Logan Jones went out on the very first series for a brief period. Mike Mislinski came in. Jones came back. But obviously now he's banged up. Between Stevens, Pieper, and Dunker kind of battling through. Like it just feels like they're a little bit banged up front, and that's probably contributing to part of this as well. And that maybe contributed. I mean, I'm not making excuses, but I'm just saying it might have contributed to some of Gronowski's shakiness in the pocket. Maybe he didn't trust it as much. I don't know. But definitely it does feel like the offense has taken a little bit of a step back, but you got to give them a lot of credit for the way they finished in that fourth quarter. Anyway, we got to get back to writing. Yeah. Sound good?
Well, yeah, one last thing.
Yeah, go for it.
I know this was not a picture-perfect game, but, I mean, it is worth noting Iowa now has twice, they've come back double-digit second-half deficits against Penn State and now against Michigan State, and it was 10 in the fourth quarter against Michigan State. And those are two games that you wouldn't usually expect Iowa to win. So credit to that probably comes down to like Mark Gronowski's leadership, his character, the fact that he's won so many games. Like that's where you're seeing that really come to fruition. But those are two games that like Iowa probably usually wouldn't win. They definitely wouldn't have won 2 seasons ago. Probably wouldn't have won last season. So like I think that's at least worth pointing out that like, hey, they've shown with their backs against the wall, and they're like being a pretty big deficit in the second half. They've been able to come back. Yeah.
So, I mean, technically 3 fourth quarter comebacks for victory this year when you count Rutgers, Penn State, and this one, and then almost against Oregon. I mean, you almost had 4 fourth quarter comebacks. And
Indiana, right?
Yeah, true. Yeah, good point. Yeah. That's crazy to think about. But anyway, that'll do it. Chad Leistikow, Tyler Tachman. We will talk to you, I guess, Maybe, I don't know. You're going to Palm Springs, so we'll see about a Tuesday pod. Not
I
sure.
think I should be able to make it work. I think
Okay. Yeah, we'll figure it out. But anyway, thanks for joining us on this post-game pod. Hawkeyes beat Michigan State 20-17. Get back to the women's game. They're up 10 midway through the third. You got plenty of time to watch the rest. Talk to you later.